It's the morning of our 35th wedding anniversary, but instead of celebrating at home with a quiet breakfast and the clinking of our old china cups, I'm standing in the cold corridor of St. Mary's Hospital. The white walls hum with the sound of fluorescent lights, and the air smells faintly of antiseptic and boiled coffee. In my hand, I'm clutching a paper cup of tea, but it is long gone cold. I hold it not for warmth, but because it steadies my trembling fingers. On the chair beside me lies an ordinary hospital clipboard, the kind every patient receives. Except this one isn't ordinary, not to me. The edge is smudged with ink, and across the top corner I see a flourish of handwriting. I know too well my wife's. For 35 years I have watched her write shopping lists in that same looping script, leave me notes on the fridge, even sign birthday cards for the children. But the signature I glimpse now looks hurried, almost forced, as though her hand had been guided by someone else's. We haven't spoken properly in weeks, not since her diagnosis. The doctor said it was manageable, but I could see how the word tasted bitter on her tongue. She has been distant, avoiding my gaze, slipping into silence whenever I ask about her condition. The gap between us has stretched so wide it feels like she is already half gone. This morning, I expected routine tests. Instead, I walked in and saw her bent over the clipboard, signing something quickly before tucking it under the thin hospital blanket. When I asked what it was, she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides more than it reveals, and said, "Just paperwork." Her hand shook as she folded the papers away. But I've lived with her long enough to know when something isn't right. That wasn't routine paperwork. And when she turned her face to the window, pretending to watch the rain streaking down the glass, I caught a glimpse of fear in her reflection. A shadow passed the door, a nurse whispering to another in hushed tones. I heard a fragment. She signed it. Already. Already signed what? My chest tightened, not from my own aging heart, but from a darker suspicion. Was she hiding something from me on the very day that should have been ours to celebrate? My mind flickers to the ordinary things that anchor me, the wedding ring still snug on my finger, the scarf she knitted me last winter, the smell of her perfume lingering faintly on my jacket. But those traces feel fragile now, like threads slipping through my hands. What could she have signed without telling me? Why the secrecy? 1,000 possibilities pressed down on me. Medical consent forms. No, those usually need me too. Insurance. Property. Something about the will, my throat goes dry. And then the early stakes strike me like a blow. What if she has decided her life, our life, should take a turn without me? What if that signature is the beginning of the end for her, for us, for everything we built together? The tea in my hand is stone cold. I set it down, and the cup crumples in my grip, leaving a wet mark on my palm. I whisper her name, but she doesn't turn. The silence between us grows heavier than the rain outside. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Before the hospital corridors, the hushed whispers of nurses and the cold fluorescent hum, there was a different rhythm to our days. I keep replaying it in my head as though memory itself might shield me from the truth I just witnessed. Every morning before illness took her strength, my wife would rise earlier than me. I'd hear the kettle whistle, a sound that somehow seemed cheerier in our kitchen than anywhere else. She'd pour 2 mugs of tea, hers always with honey, mine with a splash of milk. Then she would open the curtains, letting in the pale morning light, and scatter crumbs for the sparrows that nested in our hedge. Ordinary things, small things, but they stitched our life together like thread through cloth. I thought it would always be this way. We had our routines, our quarrels over the thermostat, our laughter during old detective shows. In the evenings, she liked to hum as she cooked, usually some forgotten lullaby her grandmother once sang. Our children teased her about it, but to me that tune meant home. That was before the doctor's words carved a fissure through our days, chronic, progressive, uncertain. He said it could be managed, but I could see in my wife's eyes that something deeper had already taken root. She became distant, like a candle slowly dimming, though her body was still there beside me. I remember one particular evening just a month ago. I had returned from the grocery store to find her standing by the window, staring out at the fading light. On the counter lay a half-written note. It was her handwriting, but shakier than usual. It read, "If anything happens to me," then the line trailed off into nothing, as though she had lost the will to finish. When I asked her about it, she crumpled the paper and threw it in the bin. I fished it out later, smoothing the wrinkles with trembling hands. That unfinished sentence haunted me. If anything happens to me. What had she been preparing to say? Some nights I hear her whispering on the phone in the other room. She thinks I'm asleep, but I catch fragments agreement urgent, he can't know. Silence follows, then the faint sound of her weeping. I don't confront her. Part of me fears the answer more than the secrecy itself. I cling to facts, to the ordinary world we once knew. I remind myself of the old superstition she loved, that a red thread binds destined lovers across time, stretching but never breaking. She told me that on our honeymoon, pointing to the bracelet of red yarn tied around her wrist by her grandmother. I still have that thread tucked in my wallet. I take it out sometimes when the silence feels unbearable. But ordinary life has a cruel way of disguising cracks until they split wide open. Looking back now, I see signs I ignored: the unopened letters from the bank piling on the table, her quick dismissal when I asked about them, the way she avoided eye contact whenever future came up in conversation. I thought love would bridge any distance between us. I thought 35 years of marriage meant no secret could pass unnoticed. Yet here I am standing in a hospital where she signed something behind my back, her face pale, as though she knows I will discover it sooner or later. Silence stretches between us, even when she's only a few feet away. Silence has its own way of speaking. The clipboard shouldn't bother me. After all, hospitals thrive on paperwork. Every cough and sneeze seems to require a signature. But this clipboard is different. I saw it tucked partly beneath her blanket, angled away from me as though it carried words not meant for my eyes. Its surface was slick with handling, the corner bent as if someone had hurriedly pressed it against a wall to sign. When the nurse walked in earlier, she held it close to her chest, not casually under her arm, the way they usually carry things. She glanced at me, once lips pursed, and handed it only to my wife. No explanations, no request for my signature, though I am her husband and legally her emergency contact. That gesture alone felt like a locked door closing between us. I replay the image in my head, my wife gripping the pen so tightly that her knuckles paled, the hurried strokes of her handwriting. That wasn't routine. That was desperation. I shift in the stiff hospital chair and glance again toward the drawer in the bedside table. A corner of paper peeks out as though forgotten, or deliberately hidden. The temptation to reach for it gnaws at me, but I hold back. I've never been one to pry into her things, not even when temptation whispered. Respect has been our marriage's anchor, but now respect feels like a luxury I can't afford. The ordinary details of the hospital sharpen in my mind as if trying to distract me. A cart squeaks past carrying trays of untouched meals. Somewhere down the hall, a television plays the morning news too loudly. A cleaner hums a hymn I can't quite place, something about mercy and forgiveness. These mundane sounds should comfort me, but instead they form a cage around my growing unease. Then I notice something else, an ink smudge on her thumb. She tries to rub it off against the sheet, but the stain lingers faintly blue. I know that ink, not from a hospital form. Hospitals use black. This was blue ballpoint, the kind used for legal or financial documents. My breath catches. Legal, financial, consent, transfer, words that I can't escape. She senses my eyes on her and turns slightly, forcing a thin smile. "You should rest," she says softly. Her voice is almost kind, but I hear the tremor. I want to believe her, to sit back, to pretend the clipboard was nothing. But 35 years of shared mornings, arguments, reconciliations, and unspoken glances tell me when she's hiding something. "Rest," she repeats and closes her eyes. Her hand, though, remains tense on the blanket, fingers curled around something I cannot see. A silence falls heavier than the beeping monitors. I remember an old superstition my grandmother used to share. If you sign your name on paper, you don't understand, you give away more than ink. You give away your soul. I used to laugh at that, dismiss it as one of her village tales. But now, looking at my wife, pale and secretive, that obscure warning feels suddenly alive. What could she have signed? Why keep it hidden from me? The questions turn in my head like blades. I lean forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my voice barely a whisper. "What did you do?" She doesn't answer. Only the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen machine fills the room. I thought I had seen all her sides, her anger, her tenderness, her stubbornness, her humor. But the woman before me now carries a mask I can't read. For the first time in decades, I feel like a stranger to her. I want to believe it's nothing. I want to believe in the safety of the ordinary clipboard. But deep inside, I know that paper holds something powerful enough to change the shape of our lives. And the worst part is, she signed it without me. I thought the clipboard was the most unusual thing in the room. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. I can't stop staring at it. Her handwriting. It's only a quick glimpse on the corner of the page before she slid the clipboard away, but it burns into my mind like a scar. For 35 years, I've watched those letters take shape: shopping lists, postcards from our travels, even the playful notes she left in my lunchbox when we were younger. I could recognize her handwriting in a room full of strangers' scrawls. But what I saw this morning was not the hand of the woman I know. Her script was jagged, unsteady, not the calm, looping curves that defined her. It looked as if someone had pressed her into signing quickly, or as though fear itself had guided the pen. I remember the way her wrist trembled when she placed the papers beneath her blanket, how she refused to meet my eyes afterward. I leaned back in the hard chair, closing my eyes for a moment. My mind drifts to a memory from years ago, our daughter's school permission slip. I had forgotten to sign it, and my wife, with her neat, proud script, always handled those things. The teacher once remarked how elegant her handwriting was, saying it reminded her of calligraphy. My wife had smiled, cheeks pink, and later told me she'd practiced as a child because her grandmother insisted that handwriting revealed the soul. Every loop shows your patience. Every line shows your truth, she used to say. If that's true, then what does today's hurried, broken signature reveal? The nurse returns, briefly pushing a cart. She doesn't look at me, only at my wife, and whispers, "We'll need the rest later." My wife nods faintly, and I catch the ghost of resignation in her eyes. I want to ask, need to ask, but the words lodge in my throat like stones. Instead, I glance down at my own hand. My wedding band presses cold against my skin. I twist it absent-mindedly, remembering another superstition. If your handwriting changes suddenly, it means fate itself is shifting, that your destiny is being rewritten. A silly thought, perhaps, but the kind of folk wisdom my grandmother swore by. And right now it doesn't feel so silly. When the nurse leaves, I clear my throat. "That didn't look like your handwriting," I say softly. My wife stiffens. For a moment, I think she will lash out, deny it, but instead she just closes her eyes and whispers, "I was tired." Tired. The word hangs between us, thin as thread. She doesn't offer more, and I don't push. But inside me, something gnaws. She has always taken pride in her steadiness. Her hand never once wavered on a birthday card or a grocery note. For her script to falter now means more than fatigue. I look at her fingers, pale against the white sheet. They twitch slightly, as if remembering the pressure of the pen. That twitch unnerves me more than anything. What did she sign that left her hands so restless? I shift again, restless myself. A distant intercom crackles, announcing visiting hours. The words echo through the sterile corridor, reminding me that time is not on my side. I thought handwriting was just ink on paper, but it has become a mirror one that shows me fear, secrets, and maybe even betrayal. And as I sit there, I realize with a cold certainty, whatever she signed, it has already begun to change our lives. Silence stretches taut and brittle. I thought I had more time to ask questions, but I was wrong. It's strange how silence can weigh more than words. For weeks now, conversations between us have become like broken bridges, half-built, abandoned, leading nowhere. I try to speak, but she answers in fragments. I reach out and she retreats behind a wall of quiet. This morning, after catching that glimpse of her signature, I thought she might finally explain. But when I asked, she only said tired and turned her face to the window. It reminded me of all the other moments recently when words never found their way across to me. I think back to the night before her admission. We sat at the kitchen table, the clock ticking too loudly in the background. I wanted to ask how she was feeling, but I was afraid of the answer. She sipped her tea, staring into the steam, then opened her mouth as if to say something. Instead, she pressed her lips together and shook her head. That was the end of it. A whole ocean left unsaid between us. We used to talk about everything. Bills, neighbors, even trivial things like which tomatoes tasted best in summer. But lately she has chosen silence, and I've chosen not to fight it. I told myself I was respecting her need for space. Deep down, I knew I was avoiding the truth. Her silence now feels less like rest and more like strategy. Like she is holding her words hostage, waiting for a moment when I can no longer intervene. I shift uneasily in the hospital chair, watching her. The beeping monitors mark the seconds slipping away. I remember something I once read in an old psychology magazine. Couples who stop having deep conversations start living parallel lives together but apart. Like two trains running side by side without ever touching tracks again. At the time, I dismissed it. We had survived arguments, money troubles, even the loss of my job once. Surely silence could not defeat us, but now I'm not so sure. Her missing words carry as much meaning as any confession. If she's not telling me what she signed, then it means she doesn't trust me with it. That realization cuts deeper than the illness, deeper than the hospital walls pressing in around me. I glance at the nightstand where a small radio sits. It used to play softly when we couldn't sleep. Now it gathers dust switched off. She hasn't asked me to turn it on once since she was admitted. Even music, once her refuge, has joined the silence. I try again. "You could have told me," I whisper. My voice barely reaches across the bed. She stirs but does not respond. The rain taps at the window like impatient fingers. Some cultures believe that silence is sacred, a sign of wisdom. But in marriage, silence can be the sharpest blade. It cuts invisibly without sound until you realize too late how deep the wound goes. I sit there waiting, hoping she will break it. Instead, the only reply is the steady hiss of the oxygen and the muted buzz of fluorescent lights. Silence has its own way of speaking. It begins with a whisper barely audible, carried on the shuffle of passing footsteps in the hallway. I don't even know who said it. A nurse maybe, or one of the orderlies wheeling a cart past the door, but I hear it as clearly as if it were meant for me. She signed it already. The words slice through the sterile air like a scalpel. My head jerks up, heart hammering. Already? Signed what? The clipboard flashes in my mind, her trembling hand scrawling a name that looked both hers and not hers. I freeze, waiting for more, but the voices fade, swallowed by the hospital's endless hum. My suspicion blooms like a dark flower. Until now, I told myself I might be imagining things, letting grief and fatigue play tricks. But this confirms it. Something real, something secret is happening behind these walls, and I've been deliberately kept out. I glance at my wife. Her eyes are closed lids heavy, but I know she's not fully asleep. Her breathing shifts slightly when the voices pass. She heard them too. I lean forward, lowering my voice. "What did you sign?" Her lashes flutter, but she doesn't answer. Instead, she turns her face further toward the window, as though the gray drizzle outside holds her safer than my gaze. The silence stretches unbearable. Suspicion hardens into dread. I think back to a story my uncle once told me about a man in our village who signed over his farmland after falling ill, believing it was a routine loan. By the time he recovered enough to realize it was gone, the land, the house, everything. Folk around there used to say, "Beware the papers you don't read. Ink can drown you deeper than water." That memory clings to me now. Could my wife be doing the same, giving away something vital under the guise of routine hospital paperwork? And if so, to whom? A nurse enters to check the IV, her eyes flickering briefly in my direction before settling on my wife. Too brief, too guarded. When I try to ask what the earlier whisper meant, she only smiles, politely. Lips pressed too thin, and says, "Don't worry, sir. Everything's in order, in order." The words sound rehearsed, practiced to soothe. Instead, they confirm the storm building inside me. I nod, pretending to accept her answer, but my stomach churns. The nurse avoids my eyes as she leaves, pulling the door shut behind her with a click that echoes louder than it should. The room feels colder now. My wife stirs slightly, adjusting her blanket. Her hand brushes the nightstand drawer where I saw that edge of paper earlier. The gesture is small, casual to anyone else, but to me it screams protection. She's guarding something. Suspicion tightens its grip on me. My trust, built over decades, wavers. I want to believe in her honesty and the bond we've shared, but every glance, every silence, every whisper drags me further from certainty. I tell myself I'll get to the bottom of it. I can't let this mystery sit. Whatever she signed, I'll find out. I have to. Because I fear that once the truth comes out, it won't just change her life, it will change mine forever. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The next morning, I linger in the hallway longer than usual, pretending to study the notice board outside her ward. It lists meal schedules, volunteer sign-ups, a blood drive poster, ordinary details. But I am listening, not reading. Hospitals are full of careless conversations if you stand still long enough. Sure enough, two voices drift from the staff lounge. A man's voice, low but urgent, says, "The transfer of rights has gone through. She signed last night." Another softer voice replies, "Her husband doesn't know yet. Keep it quiet." Transfer of rights. The words hit me like a fist to the chest. My knees weaken and I grip the notice board to steady myself. Transfer of what rights? Property, savings, medical consent. The possibilities twist in my mind like storm clouds. I force myself to walk back into the room calmly, though my heart pounds. My wife looks up briefly, her expression unreadable. The morning light spills through the window, pale and weak, casting shadows across her face. She doesn't ask where I've been. That in itself feels like an answer. I sit down trying to hide the tremor in my hands. The beeping of the monitor feels louder, sharper. I think about how hospitals are supposed to heal, yet here they seem to deal in secrets. I glance at her hand resting on the blanket. No wedding ring. She must have slipped it off before surgery, but seeing her finger bare unsettles me. That small circle of gold has always been our bond proof of a promise. Without it, her hand looks strangely alone, almost belonging to someone else. I clear my throat. I overheard something. I begin carefully. They mentioned transfer of rights. Her eyes widen for the briefest moment before she lowers them. You shouldn't listen to gossip, she says. Her voice is steady, but I hear the strain beneath it. It's not gossip. I know that with every instinct I have, but I bite my tongue. Pushing her now would only drive her further into silence. I remember an old legal fact I once read in a newspaper column. In certain cases, a spouse can sign away shared property without the other's immediate knowledge, especially if it's tied to medical debt. At the time, it seemed like one of those obscure loopholes that never touch ordinary people. Now it feels like the shadow standing in my room. I steal a glance at her drawer again, at the papers hidden inside. I imagine the words on them, signatures, clauses, maybe even my name without my consent. The thought makes my skin crawl. Outside, the rain has stopped leaving streaks on the glass. The world looks washed clean, but inside me, everything feels stained. I want to shout. I want to demand answers. Instead, I sit in silence, the words burning inside me because I know once spoken they cannot be taken back. Silence has its own way of speaking. I wait until she drifts into a shallow sleep, her chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm. The steady beep of the monitor assures me she is stable for now. My chance. I slip quietly from the chair and step into the corridor. The hospital feels different when you leave the room, less personal, more like a machine. Gurneys squeak by, voices echo faintly, and the walls stretch into sterile infinity. I head toward the nurse's station, my mind rehearsing what to say. I can't ask directly, not without raising alarm, but I can nudge circle pry at the edges. A young nurse is scribbling notes into a chart. Her hair is tied back so tightly it looks painful. I clear my throat. Excuse me, I begin, keeping my tone polite, even casual. My wife was given some paperwork yesterday. Could you tell me what it was about? Her pen stills just for a second. A flicker, that's all it takes. She looks up, eyes darting toward me, then away. Just standard forms, she says quickly. Consent for routine procedures. Nothing unusual. Too fast, too rehearsed. I know when someone is dodging. I lean slightly closer, lowering my voice. I've been her husband for 35 years. I've signed every form until now. Why not this one? Her lips press into a thin line. For a moment I think she might answer, but then she shakes her head. I can't discuss patient documents, sir. Privacy rules. Privacy. As if I'm a stranger. As if 35 years of marriage, of shared mornings and buried parents and raised children count for nothing. I nod slowly, masking the heat rising in my chest. Of course, I murmur. I understand. But inside, the suspicion festers. If it truly were routine, she would have said so without hesitation. Instead, her eyes slid away. Her shoulders tightened and her words carried the weight of something unsaid. I walk back down the corridor, my shoes squeaking faintly on the polished floor. A cleaner passes me, humming under her breath a tune I vaguely recognize. It's a lullaby, one my wife used to sing when our daughter was small. For a moment, the sound pierces me with nostalgia, but then it twists, reminding me of the gap between then and now. Back then, every secret was shared. Now they're piling up around me like locked doors. When I return to the room, my wife is awake again, staring at the ceiling. Her eyes flick to me briefly, searching for something, perhaps suspicion, perhaps knowledge. I force a smile, but I know it doesn't reach my eyes. I once read in a medical ethics article that trust between patient and caregiver is the strongest medicine. What happens when trust itself is poisoned? I sit down again, my heart heavy. Whatever she signed, it was important enough to make even the nurses uneasy. That means it isn't just paperwork, it's something with teeth. I thought I was beginning to uncover the truth, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The next time the doctor enters, I'm ready. He's a tall man with a thinning hairline, his white coat too crisp as though it's been ironed just for show. He greets my wife with professional warmth, checking her chart, listening to her chest. I wait until he sets the stethoscope aside before speaking. Doctor, I begin, steadying my voice. Yesterday my wife signed something. I'd like to know what it was. For the briefest second, his eyes flick toward her. It's instinctive, a small betrayal of his calm exterior. Then he clears his throat. Routine authorization, he says. Hospitals require a lot of signatures. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. The phrase feels too smooth, like a stone worn by water. It doesn't fit the tension in my wife's face, nor the hushed whispers I overheard in the corridor. I press a little harder. Routine authorization usually involves me too. I've signed plenty of forms before. Why not this one? He adjusts his glasses, buying time. Sometimes in cases of personal consent, it's only the patient's signature required. There's no cause for alarm. Personal consent. The words hang in the air. They sound clinical, harmless even, but I hear the emptiness beneath them. Consent to what? Surgery transfer. Something financial. The doctor doesn't say. My wife shifts slightly on the bed, her eyes darting to the blanket. I know that look. She wants to end the conversation. Doctor, I say more firmly, what exactly did she sign? He meets my gaze, then steady but guarded. Sir, you should focus on her recovery. That's what matters most right now. He forces a small smile, pats my wife's hand, and exits before I can push further. The door clicks shut. The silence he leaves behind is heavier than his words. My wife finally speaks, her voice low. It's nothing you need to worry about. There it is again, that phrase. Nothing to worry about. Always the curtain pulled over the window. Always half an answer where a truth should be. I lean forward. If it's nothing, then tell me. Her lips tremble. She inhales, exhales, then shakes her head. I can't. Those two words slice deeper than any explanation could have. I can't, not I won't, not later. But I can't. I sit back slowly, the chair creaking beneath me. My heart thuds like a drum in my ears. I think of the old saying, half-truths are heavier than lies because they force you to carry both what you know and what you imagine. Right now, imagination is carving me apart. I glance once more at her hands, still bear no wedding ring. She notices and pulls the blanket higher as though to hide the absence. I want to believe her, to let it go, but the silence, the whispers, the evasions, they don't add up. I thought the doctor's words would soothe me. Instead, they pour fuel on my suspicion. And as I sit there staring at the woman I've loved most of my life, I realize whatever she signed, it is not just routine. I thought I had reached the edge of the mystery, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. I wait until evening, when the bustle of the ward finally quiets. The lights are dimmed, the nurses move like shadows, and the only sounds are the slow drip of the IV and the occasional cough from the next room. My wife lies propped against the pillows, her face half illuminated by the pale glow of the bedside lamp. She looks fragile, almost smaller than I remember, and for a moment I hesitate. But I can't carry these questions any longer. I lean forward, my voice quiet but steady. I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer me honestly. What was that paper you signed? Her eyes flicker toward me, then away, settling on the window where the rain streaks like silver threads. She doesn't speak. The silence between us stretches until it feels unbearable. I overheard things, I continue. About transfers, about rights. I've been your husband for 35 years. Why am I the last to know? Her lips part, but no sound comes out. She swallows, her throat working. Finally, she whispers, it's complicated. Complicated. I almost laugh at the word. After a lifetime together, after raising children, weathering storms, and burying our parents side by side, she calls it complicated. I keep my tone soft, though my chest burns. Then explain it to me. Help me understand. Her hand trembles on the blanket. I notice her fingers curl slightly as though clutching something invisible. I didn't want to burden you, she says at last. You've already carried so much. Burden. That word cuts deep. We promised once that there would be no such thing between us, that every weight would be halved by sharing. To hear her say it now feels like betrayal dressed as kindness. I would rather be burdened with truth than sheltered with lies, I reply. My voice cracks despite my effort to stay calm. She flinches just barely. Her eyes finally meet mine, and for the first time in weeks, I see raw fear in them, not of illness, but of me discovering something she has tried desperately to keep hidden. I reach for her hand, but she pulls it back slightly, resting it closer to her chest. The gesture is small, but it feels like a wall rising higher between us. Please, I whisper, tell me. Her lips tremble. She takes a shaky breath, and for a heartbeat, I think she will confess. But then her eyes slide away again, and she shakes her head. Not here. Not now. My chest tightens. The soft confrontation has given me no answers, only more shadows. Yet the way she said, not here, not now, tells me one thing. Whatever she signed, it wasn't trivial, and it isn't something she intends to keep hidden forever. But why wait? Why protect me from it until later? I sit back slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. Silence has its own way of speaking. The next day begins with an unease I can't shake. The morning light spills weakly across the ward, pale and cold, as if even the sun is reluctant to enter this place. I bring her tea from the cafeteria, lukewarm and bitter, but she only stares at it, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The silence between us is heavy, weighted by last night's unanswered questions. Then the door opens. A man in a dark suit steps inside, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum floor. He carries a slim leather briefcase tucked tightly under his arm. Everything about him feels out of place here, the gleam of his cufflinks, the sharp crease of his trousers. He is no doctor, no visitor bringing flowers. He is business incarnate, cutting through the hospital air with the scent of cologne and expensive paper. My wife stiffens. She doesn't speak, but her eyes widen ever so slightly. Recognition. My heart lurches. "Good morning," the man says politely, his gaze landing on me before flicking to her. "Mrs. Kim, I just need a few minutes of your time." Mrs. Kim, not my wife, not the patient, but a client. My stomach twists. I stand. "Who are you?" He smiles thinly, the kind of smile that reveals nothing. "Just handling some documents." He taps the briefcase lightly, as though that explains everything. "Documents," that cursed word again. My wife's voice emerges soft but urgent. "Please, just not now." The man hesitates, then nods. "I'll return later." He offers me a polite bow before exiting as swiftly as he entered. But the echo of his presence lingers heavy as smoke. I turn to her, my pulse racing. "Who was that?" She closes her eyes, pressing her lips together. No answer. The ward feels smaller now, the walls pressing in. Other patients stir in their beds, casting curious glances our way. A nurse peeks in, frowning, but quickly retreats. Even they seem to know this isn't their place to interfere. I sink back into my chair, my mind whirling. A suited man, a briefcase, my wife's signature, and the word documents. The pieces circle like vultures, refusing to land, but I already sense the shape of something ominous forming. I remember an article I once read about hospitals and financial power of attorney. How under certain conditions, a spouse or relative can sign away control of assets, property, even businesses. The article had seemed irrelevant then. Now it scratches at my memory with terrible precision. I glance at her. She looks so small against the vast white bed, yet the secrets she carries feel enormous, threatening to drown us both. I want to shake her, to force the truth from her lips, but instead I whisper, almost pleading, "What have you done?" Her eyes glisten, but she says nothing. I thought the stranger's visit was the peak of my alarm, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The ward is never truly quiet, but that afternoon the air feels thicker, as if every sound is muffled under a weight I can't see. I sit in the corner, pretending to read a newspaper, though my eyes don't register the words. My wife dozes lightly, her breath shallow. I'm still replaying the visit from the man in the suit when the door opens again. This time he doesn't come alone. A second man follows him, older, balding, carrying a bulging folder beneath his arm. They exchange a glance and then step inside with the confidence of men who know they are expected. I rise immediately. "What is this?" My voice is sharper than I intended, cutting through the hum of the machines. The first man offers the same polite, practiced smile. "Routine, sir. Just clarifying some matters with your wife." My wife's eyes snap open, and for a moment I see panic flicker there. "Not now," she whispers again, clutching at the blanket as if it were armor. The second man lowers his voice, but I hear him clearly. "It's about the property. We need her consent on the final clause." Property. The word slams into me. My vision narrows as though the walls of the ward are closing in. What property, I demand. Neither of them answers directly. Instead, the younger man says smoothly, "Sir, perhaps you could step outside while we discuss." "No!" The word bursts out of me louder than intended. A patient down the hall coughs, and a nurse pokes her head in, frowning. I wave her away. My wife shakes her head, slowly, eyes brimming with something I can't name. Fear, guilt, resignation. She presses a trembling hand against her chest. "Please," she murmurs, "just give us a moment. Give us a moment." Us. As though she and these strangers are a unit and I am the outsider. The thought cuts deep. I grip the edge of her bedside table until my knuckles ache. Why am I not part of this? I ask softer now, my voice almost breaking. 35 years and I'm standing here like a stranger. The older man clears his throat. "Sir, I assure you this is standard. Your wife has the right to make certain decisions independently." Independently. The word tastes bitter. The folder slips slightly from his arm and a page juts out. I catch the heading in bold letters, "Transfer of Ownership." My blood runs cold. They gather themselves quickly, straightening the papers, but the damage is done. I've seen enough to know this isn't hospital routine. It's something bigger, something dangerous. My wife looks at me then, and in her eyes I see the truth. She won't say aloud she has already given something away. Something we built together. The men leave with their folder, promising to return later. The door shuts softly, but the sound echoes like a hammer. I collapse into the chair, my heart pounding, the world tilting beneath me. I thought whispers were bad enough, but hearing the word property spoken aloud, that was a different kind of wound. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. That night, after the men leave and the ward sinks into uneasy quiet, I can't sit still. My wife turns her face to the wall, feigning sleep, though I know her breathing too well to be fooled. She wants to avoid me to slip away into silence, but the folder's bold heading, "Transfer of Ownership," still burns in my mind. I glance at the nightstand. The drawer is shut, but I've seen papers tucked inside before. The temptation gnaws at me. For decades, I never once searched her things without permission. But trust feels like a broken bridge now, and I'm stranded on the far side. Slowly, quietly, I rise from the chair. The linoleum floor creaks faintly under my steps. My pulse thunders in my ears loud enough that I fear it might wake her. I crouch, my hand trembling as I pull at the drawer. It slides open with a soft rasp. Inside, beneath tissues and a half-used tube of lip balm, I spot an envelope, cream-colored thick with no markings except a faint crease as though it has been folded, unfolded, and folded again too many times. My fingers hesitate, hovering. Once I touch it, I cross a line. But I'm already past lines. I slip it out carefully. The flap isn't sealed. My breath catches as I pull out the contents. Not medical charts, not hospital instructions, letters, notices. Debt collection demands the ink smudged with handling. My eyes race across the numbers overdue, balances, threats of legal action, final warnings. All addressed to her, none of them ever shown to me. Beneath the stack is a handwritten note, her handwriting, though, shaky, rushed. "If anything happens to me, make sure this is resolved. Don't let him know yet." My chest tightens. Don't let him know. Him. Me, 35 years of marriage, and she's hiding not just illness but debts I never imagined. I sit back on my heels, the papers shaking in my hands. How long has she carried this alone? Why didn't she tell me? Pride? Fear? Or something darker? Was she protecting herself at my expense? An old folk belief flickers in my memory. Debt is like a shadow passed from one soul to another if left unresolved. My grandmother used to warn, never die owing money. The living will pay with blood instead. I used to laugh. But here, holding these notices, it doesn't feel like a joke. I slip the papers back into the envelope, returning it carefully to the drawer. My hands tremble, my throat dry. She stirs slightly and I freeze, heart hammering. But she doesn't wake. I sink back into the chair, staring at her silhouette against the dim light. She looks peaceful. But I know the truth now. She has been hiding a storm beneath her calm exterior. I thought uncovering the envelope would give me clarity. Instead, it leaves me with more questions, each one heavier than the last. I thought I was finally piecing things together. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. Morning comes with a gray sky pressing against the hospital windows. I barely slept. The envelope I found gnaws at me, its weight heavier than any nightmare. My wife wakes slowly, her eyelids fluttering as though she has been fighting dreams too. I don't confront her immediately. Instead, I hand her the tea I fetched from the cafeteria, watching her fingers curl around the cup. They tremble slightly. She notices my stare and forces a small smile. It doesn't reach her eyes. I looked in the drawer, I say at last, my voice low, steady. I saw the letters. Her hands freeze. The cup rattles faintly against the saucer. For a long moment, she says nothing. Then in a voice so quiet I almost miss it, she whispers, "I didn't want you to know." The words hit me harder than any yell could. Why, I demand softly. Why keep this from me? Her eyes glisten, but she doesn't look away this time. Because you would have carried it all, and I couldn't stand to watch you break under it. I shake my head. We promised, remember, no burdens alone. Not after my father died and left my mother drowning in debt. You said we'd never let silence eat us alive. Her lips pressed together, trembling. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I thought if I signed the papers it would be handled. Papers. Always the papers. My chest tightens. Handled how? She glances toward the door, her voice barely above a whisper. I owed more than I told you. I borrowed against the house, the shop, everything. The men you saw there from the firm that owns the debt now. Her confession is a dagger wrapped in cloth. She hides the blade with words of guilt and love, but it cuts all the same. I lean back in my chair, trying to breathe evenly. A fact surfaces from somewhere deep in my memory. In some states, spousal property laws mean one partner's debts can consume everything shared. I never thought those dry legal lines could threaten our life so directly. But here they are pressing against me like walls closing in. She sips her tea, her eyes lowered. I signed because I thought it would protect you. That's all I'll say now. Protect me. The irony burns. Protection built on silence is just betrayal dressed in noble clothing. Still, her honesty, half fragile, softened something in me. For weeks I've lived in shadows. Now at least there's light, even if it reveals ruin. But as I watch her shrink into the pillows, frail and guilty, I realize she hasn't told me everything. There's still more beneath the surface, a truth heavier than debt alone. Silence has its own way of speaking, and hers tells me there's another secret yet to come. I can't keep circling around the truth. Half answers weigh heavier than silence, and now that I've seen the debt letters and heard her fractured confession, my chest burns with the need for clarity. The ward is dim tonight, the overhead lights muted, throwing long shadows across the floor. The hum of the oxygen machine is steady, like a metronome ticking down to a moment I can no longer delay. I push my chair closer to her bed. She notices, her eyes darting toward me nervously. "What is it?" she asks, her voice fragile. I grip the armrest, knuckles whitening. No more hiding. No more I can't or it's complicated. I want to know exactly what you signed. What did you give them? The house, the savings? Tell me. Her lips tremble. She tries to look away, but I reach out gently but firmly, placing my hand on hers. "Look at me," I whisper. 35 years together. I deserve the truth. She inhales shakily, eyes filling with tears. "I thought I could shield you," she says. "I thought if I handled it alone, you could live without this weight. But I see now I was wrong." Wrong. My voice cracks. "You didn't just keep me in the dark, you may have signed away everything we built. Do you understand what that means?" Her tears spill over. "Yes," she whispers, "and it kills me every second." I pull back slightly, my heart torn between anger and sorrow. The memory of our younger days rushes to me when we signed our first mortgage together, trembling with excitement, her hands steady as she traced her name beside mine. We had promised that every decision would be shared, every burden halved. That promise feels shattered now. "There's more, isn't there?" I press. She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she fidgets with the blanket, twisting a loose thread around her finger. "They said if I didn't sign, the debt would fall on you. On the children, too. I couldn't let that happen." Her words slice through me. Protection, that was her motive. Noble perhaps, but the path to ruin is often paved with good intentions. A hush falls between us, thicker than any before. I hear footsteps in the hall, the squeak of a gurney wheel, someone coughing in the distance. But here in this room, the air feels taut, waiting to snap. I lean closer, lowering my voice. "Tell me everything. No more fragments, no more silence. If we are to survive this, I need the whole truth. Now." Her shoulders quake. For a moment I think she'll finally pour it all out, but then her gaze flicks toward the door, fearful. "Not yet," she says, trembling. "Not here. They'll come again soon. You'll see for yourself." Her refusal ignites a flare of frustration in me, but I swallow it. Forcing her now will only push her further into fear. Still, my resolve hardens. When they come again, I'll be ready. I thought tonight's confrontation would bring closure. Instead, it left me standing at the edge of a deeper abyss. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. That night, the hospital grows quieter than I've ever heard it. Visiting hours long gone, the ward hums with machines and the occasional shuffle of a nurse on rounds. My wife sleeps or pretends to sleep, her breathing shallow but steady. I should rest too, but tension keeps my eyes open, my body alert. Around midnight, I hear the faint click of the door. My eyes snap open. A shadow moves across the dimly lit room. It's him, the man in the suit. He doesn't come alone this time. Another figure trails behind their footsteps, soft but deliberate. I hold still, pretending to be asleep, my head tilted slightly, eyelids half lowered. Through the slits of my lashes, I watch. He leans close to my wife, whispering something I can't hear. She stirs, opening her eyes. For the first time in weeks, I see her fully alert, fear flashing in her expression before she composes herself. She reaches under her blanket, pulling out a folded stack of papers I hadn't seen before. My pulse quickens. Where did she hide those? She hands them to the man. He flips through them quickly, the pages catching the faint light. I catch a glimpse of words: transfer authorization irrevocable. My chest tightens. The second figure steps closer, placing a pen in her hand. My wife hesitates, her fingers trembling. She glances toward me. For a terrifying second, I think she knows I'm awake, but she doesn't call out. Instead, she signs her pen, scratching quietly across the page. My fists clench beneath the blanket. Every instinct screams to leap up to demand an explanation, to rip the papers from their hands. But something pins me down, fear of making things worse, fear of confirming what I already suspect. So I lie there paralyzed by dread, watching betrayal unfold, not in words but in ink. When she finishes, the man slides the papers into his briefcase. "It will be done," he murmurs. His tone is soft, but it carries finality, like the closing of a door that will never open again. They leave as quietly as they entered the door, clicking shut. My wife slumps back against the pillows, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She covers her face with her hands. For a moment I think she might cry, but instead she whispers something I barely catch. "Forgive me." The words tear through me. Forgive me. For what? For saving me from debt? For betraying me? For deciding alone what should have been shared? I stare at the ceiling, the darkness pressing down. Every sound of the hospital seems amplified. The distant beep of a monitor, the hiss of oxygen, the faint squeak of a mop bucket in the hall, but none of it drowns the echo of her whisper. "Forgive me." I thought seeing her sign in daylight was unbearable. Watching her do it in the dead of night under shadows and secrecy was far worse. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. I don't sleep. How could I? The image of her signing those papers in the dim hospital light replays over and over, a loop that tightens like a noose around my chest. By morning, my eyes burn, my hands shake, and yet I can't stop scanning every detail for answers. It's during breakfast rounds that I notice it. The suited man returns briefly, this time without his companion. He slips inside quietly, thinking no one pays attention, but I watch every movement. He sets a folder on the tray table, leaning close to whisper something to my wife. When he turns to leave, he gathers his briefcase quickly, but in his haste, something slips. A second folder tumbles to the floor, hitting with a muted thud. He curses under his breath, bending quickly to scoop it up. But in that fleeting second, the cover flips open just enough for me to glimpse a header printed in bold: Kim Family Holdings. Family Holdings. My stomach twists violently. That's not just debt notices, that's us, our house, our shop, the little land parcel my father left me, everything tied to our name. I force myself to remain still, feigning indifference, but my pulse pounds so hard I feel it in my throat. He tucks the folder under his arm, nods politely, and leaves without a word. The moment the door shuts, I turn to her. She's pale, her hands knotted together, her gaze fixed on the floor. She doesn't meet my eyes. "You saw it, didn't you?" I whisper. She flinches. That's answer enough. I lean forward, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and despair. "What are you doing with them? Why is our family's name on their papers?" Her lips part, but no sound comes. She only shakes her head slowly, as if words might choke her. A memory surfaces years ago when her uncle died. We sat through the reading of his will, watching cousins tear each other apart over land and money. She had gripped my hand tightly, then whispering, "Promise me we'll never let money destroy us." I promised. And yet here we are, standing on the very edge of that cliff. I glanced toward the door, replaying the glimpse of the folder in my mind. Kim Family Holdings. It confirms my worst fear. This isn't just about her debt. It's about everything we built, everything we swore to protect for our children. The clue sits heavy in my chest, undeniable. This is no longer a suspicion, it's fact. She has entangled us in something far larger than she admitted. The silence between us thickens. She trembles, still staring at the floor, and for the first time in our marriage, I feel a wall I cannot cross. I thought I wanted the truth, but I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The folder's name, Kim Family Holdings, haunts me all morning. My wife barely speaks, and when she does, her words are clipped hollow, as though each one has to be dragged through barbed wire before reaching her lips. I try to eat the cafeteria soup a nurse leaves on the tray, but it tastes like ash. My appetite is gone. Only suspicion feeds me now. It happens almost by accident. While tidying the clutter around her bed, newspapers, tissues, magazines, I notice one of the magazines feels heavier than it should. I flip it open and out slip several photocopied pages folded neatly between glossy ads for vacations and skin cream. My pulse spikes. I glance at her, but her eyes are closed, her breathing shallow, whether she's sleeping or pretending I can't tell. Carefully, I slide the papers into my lap. The first page is a legal document stamped in blue ink. Words jump out immediately. Power of attorney, transfer of assets, irrevocable agreement. The second page lists property descriptions I know by heart. The address of our home, the name of my father's old land plot. Even the small rental shop downtown that barely covers the bills. My throat dries as I see each one lined up like livestock for sale. At the bottom, her shaky signature sprawls across the line, not mine, hers alone, and below it, in bold, spouse not required. I feel the floor tilt beneath me. My hands tremble, the paper rattling faintly. For 35 years we've shared everything, yet here in black and white is proof she has signed it all away without me. An obscure fact surfaces in my mind. Something I read once in a dusty financial column under certain debt recovery laws. Creditors can seize shared assets if one spouse defaults, even if the other never agreed. I'd dismissed it as irrelevant trivia. Now it looms like a noose tightening around my neck. I flip through the pages again, desperate for hope for some clause that spares us. But every line reads like a death sentence for the life we built. I shove the papers back into the magazine just as she stirs, shifting slightly against the pillows. My chest heaves, my face hot, but I force calm into my features. She doesn't open her eyes, and I wonder if she knew I would find them, if hiding them in plain sight was her way of confessing without speaking. The magazine sits on the table, innocuous on the outside, but poisonous within. I stare at her, the woman I trusted most in this world, and feel the bitter taste of betrayal coat my tongue. I thought the first clue was unbearable. But seeing the full copies of the agreement made one thing clear: she has already given away our life piece by piece to strangers. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. By evening, I can't hold it inside any longer. The magazine with its poisonous contents sits on the bedside table, mocking me with every glance. The evidence is undeniable now: her signature, the property descriptions, the irrevocable transfer. I've swallowed silence for too long. I wait until the ward is quieter, until the shuffle of nurses fades down the corridor. Then I push the chair closer to her bed, my voice firm, no longer soft or pleading. "I found the papers," I say. Her eyes snap open, and for once she doesn't try to feign ignorance. They widen with shock, then cloud with resignation. She looks down at her hands, twisting the blanket as if it might shield her. "All of it," I continue, my voice trembling with anger. "The house, the land, even the shop. You signed them away, without me, without a word." Tears well in her eyes. But I don't stop. 35 years. 35 years of promises, of building a life together. And you hand it over to strangers in the middle of the night. "Why?" Her lips tremble, but she whispers, "To protect you." "Protect me." The words burst from me too loud, drawing a glance from a patient across the ward. I lower my voice, but the fury doesn't soften. "You call this protection? Selling everything we own behind my back. That's not protection, it's betrayal." She covers her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. For a moment the sight cracks something in me, but the hurt is too raw to ease. The door opens suddenly. The man in the suit steps in, briefcase in hand, his calm expression slicing through the tension like a knife. "Is everything all right here?" he asks smoothly, though he knows the answer. I rise to my feet, pointing at him. You've been circling like a vulture, feeding on her fear. What have you done to us?" He maintains his composure, his tone professional. "Sir, your wife acted within her rights. The agreements are perfectly legal." "Legal," I hiss. "Maybe on paper. But in a marriage, legality isn't the same as trust. You've turned her against me with your fine print and threats." My wife lowers her hands, her cheeks wet. "Please stop," she whispers. "You don't understand." "You're right," I reply bitterly. "I don't. Because you never gave me the chance to." The man adjusts his tie, unfazed. The matter is settled. Further discussion will not change the outcome. He snaps the briefcase shut with a finality that echoes in my chest. I step toward him, but my wife's trembling voice halts me. "Please, don't fight him. It's done." Her words land heavier than any blow. Done. Final. Irrevocable. The suited man leaves his footsteps unhurried, as if he knows he's already won. The door closes softly, but the sound feels like a gavel striking, sealing our fate. I turn back to her, my breath ragged, my hands shaking. "You should have trusted me," I say, my voice raw. "We could have faced this together. But now I don't know if we have anything left." She sobs quietly, clutching the blanket to her chest. The space between us has never felt wider. I thought confronting her directly would bring me answers. Instead, it only shattered what little trust remained. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The morning after our confrontation, the ward buzzes with unusual tension. Nurses move briskly, avoiding eye contact. Patients whisper, glancing toward our room as though it carries a contagion not of illness but of scandal. I sense something larger unfolding, a shift that makes my skin crawl. It comes quickly. Two hospital administrators stride in their expressions, clipped and professional, followed closely by the man in the suit. One administrator carries a clipboard, the other a slim folder stamped with the hospital's crest. They don't bother with pleasantries. Mr. Kim, the taller one, says firmly, "We need to ask you to remain calm during this process. Your wife has executed several legally binding documents regarding her estate and financial obligations. Any interference could complicate matters." Complicate matters. My fists clench at the phrase, but I force myself to stay seated. You talk as if I'm a bystander. I am her husband. 35 years. Everything she signed affects me too. The shorter administrator shakes his head, sympathy feigned in his eyes. I'm afraid the documents specify her independent consent. The law recognizes her autonomy. My wife shifts weakly in bed, her face pale. "Please," she whispers, "don't make this worse." Make this worse. My voice cracks, rising despite myself. They're stripping us of everything: our home, our land, our livelihood. And you call it worse if I dare to object? The suited man clears his throat, his tone calm, infuriatingly so. "Sir, the debts were significant. Without this arrangement, the consequences would have been severe. This resolution spares you from greater harm." "Spare me," I snap, "by robbing me blind in broad daylight." A nurse hovers near the door, clearly summoned in case things spiral. I see her grip the frame, ready to intervene. The taller administrator steps forward, voice stern. "Sir, I must warn you, disruptive behavior could result in removal from the ward. Please remember this is a hospital, not a courtroom." The threat chills me. Removed from my wife's side, the very thought claws at me, but rage surges just beneath it. I look at her, my wife, my partner in everything until now. She's trembling, her lips moving as if to speak, but only silence escapes. She knows I'm cornered. She knows they have the upper hand. An obscure fact flickers in my memory from an old news story: a man once thrown out of a hospital for disruptive conduct during a legal dispute, barred from seeing his dying spouse again. That memory grips me like ice. Could that happen to me? I take a breath, forcing my voice lower. I won't leave, not until I know the full truth. The administrators exchange a glance, then nod curtly. "Very well, but you must understand the process is moving forward regardless of your objections." With that, they turn and leave the suited man trailing behind. The door closes, but the pressure they leave behind lingers like smoke. I sink into the chair, my body trembling. Around us, the hospital hum resumes: orderlies wheeling carts, monitors beeping, but it all feels distant. She finally speaks, her voice breaking. "I didn't want you to fight them. That's why I did it alone." Her words don't soothe me. They crush me. I thought losing trust was unbearable, but watching officials dismantle our life in front of me while I sat powerless was far worse. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The truth comes not with a whisper this time, but with a storm. By late afternoon, the suited man returns, this time flanked by both administrators and a hospital lawyer, his briefcase thicker than before. Their presence shifts the atmosphere of the ward. Even the nurses hover uneasily outside, pretending to chart notes while stealing glances inside. He lays the briefcase on the tray table and opens it with a sharp snap. Papers spill out in neat stacks, each page stamped, signed, finalized. My stomach churns before he even speaks. "Mr. and Mrs. Kim," he begins formally, "these documents complete the transfer of all holdings into a trust managed by our firm. In exchange, the debts are considered settled." A trust, managed by them. My blood runs cold. "Settled," I echo, my voice shaking. "You call it settled when you've stolen our lives, our home, our land, everything we worked for." The lawyer adjusts his glasses. "It was voluntary. Your wife executed every signature herself. These pages make it irrevocable." Irrevocable. That word slams into me harder than any blow. I turn to her, my wife, my partner of 35 years. "Tell me this isn't true," I beg. "Tell me there's something left." Her face crumples. Tears spilling freely now. "I thought I was saving you," she whispers. "The creditors were circling. They threatened to come after you after the children. I couldn't let that happen. So I signed it all away. The house, the land, even the shop." My chest caves in, without me, without a word. She nods, shame flooding her features. "I couldn't bear to see you suffer under it." I stagger back, gripping the edge of the chair for balance. My world tilts, every memory of us painting the walls of our first home, planting trees in the yard, saving penny by penny for the shop, shatters like glass, all gone with the stroke of a pen. The lawyer slides the final document across the tray, tapping it with his pen. "This is the acknowledgement of completion. Once signed here, the transfer is fully enforceable." I snatch the paper before she can reach for it. My eyes race across the lines. Words blur together, irrevocable, relinquish binding, no contest. At the bottom, her signature already sprawls in shaky ink. My heart drops. She signed this too. I crumple the edge of the page in my hand. "You've already done it," I whisper, horror flooding me. "There's nothing left to stop." She reaches out her hand trembling. "Please understand, I did it for love." Love. The word feels twisted now, hollow, warped into something unrecognizable. The lawyer calmly collects the papers, sliding them back into his briefcase. "It is finished," he says, as though delivering a verdict. He nods curtly and leaves the administrators following. The door closes with a finality that makes the air in the room collapse. I sink into the chair, numb, staring at my wife through a haze of betrayal. She sobs quietly, her shoulders shaking, whispering apologies that cannot undo what's been done. The truth is out. The assets are gone, our life dismantled with signatures and stamps. I thought suspicion was unbearable. But hearing her confess, watching the legal machinery grind our world into dust, that was the breaking point. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The room feels hollow after they leave, as though the air itself has been drained. My wife lies against the pillows, her face streaked with tears. The papers are gone, locked away in that briefcase, but the damage clings to every corner like smoke after a fire. I can't move at first. My body is heavy, my hands numb. I hear the faint buzz of the fluorescent light above the squeak of a gurney in the hall, but they sound far away. All I can hear clearly is her broken voice repeating, "I did it for you. I did it for you." For me? My words slice through the silence. For me, you gave away our home, our land, the only shop that still carried our name. For me. My voice cracks equal parts fury and grief. She covers her face with trembling hands. "They threatened you, and the children. I couldn't let them take everything from you piece by piece. I thought this way at least the debt would end with me. The children." Their names on her lips twist the knife deeper. Our son who just started building his own family. Our daughter who still struggles with bills of her own. Did she really believe stripping away our foundation would somehow protect them? A nurse slips in quietly, adjusting the IV, eyes lowered, clearly aware but unwilling to speak. She lingers a moment as if wanting to comfort us both, but then withdraws silently, closing the door behind her. Even she knows this is not a wound she can tend. I stand pacing the small space. My mind churns, trying to make sense of what's left. 35 years of labor, love, sacrifices gone, sold off in a haze of desperation and secrecy. I remember an obscure cultural detail my grandmother used to say, "When a house is lost, the family's spirit wanders with it." She believed walls absorbed memories, laughter, even sorrow. And when you abandon them, those spirits became homeless too. The thought chills me. Our walls, our memories, our very spirit now belong to strangers. I turn back to my wife. She's watching me now, eyes red, voice trembling. "I thought you'd hate me less if you never knew. I was wrong." Her confession lands heavy. It's not only what she did, it's the fact that she believed deception was mercy. I press my hands against my face, dragging them down slowly. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed us, everything we swore we'd protect." She sobs softly, and for the first time I can't bring myself to reach for her hand. The distance between us has grown into something I can't cross, not tonight. I sink into the chair again, staring at the rain-streaked window. The storm outside is cleared, but inside me, it rages on. I thought the revelation itself was the end, but as the silence stretches, I realize the real battle is only beginning, between anger and forgiveness, between ruin and survival. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. By the next evening, her strength seems to falter. She lies against the pillows, pale, fragile, her breath shallow but deliberate. When I walk back into the room after a restless trip to the cafeteria, I notice her eyes fixed on me as though she has been waiting. "Sit," she whispers. Her voice is weak, but it carries urgency. I lower myself into the chair beside her, uncertain. The bitterness of yesterday still coils inside me, yet the raw desperation in her eyes keeps me silent. "I need you to hear me." She begins, her fingers clutching at the blanket as though it were the last rope holding her steady. "Not the papers, not the debts. Me." I nod stiffly, unsure if I'm ready, but she continues anyway. "When I first learned about the illness," she says slowly, "I thought I could fight it alone. The doctors said it was manageable, but I saw the fear in their faces. I knew the treatments would drain us. And then the debts, they grew faster than I admitted. Letters piled up, threats followed. I panicked." Her eyes shimmer, tears clinging to the edges. I remembered how your mother suffered after your father's debt swallowed everything. I swore I would never do that to you. So when they offered a way to wipe it all clean, I signed. I signed because I thought I was protecting you from a future of humiliation. I stare at her, my throat tight. For weeks I have searched for the motive behind the betrayal, and now it lies bare before me. Not greed, not malice, but fear and love twisted into ruin. She reaches for my hand with trembling fingers. I let her take it, though my grip is hesitant. I didn't trust you with the truth, she admits, her voice cracking. Not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you too much and I thought you'd carry the pain until it crushed you. That's my sin. Her words pierce me deeper than anger ever could. I remember the superstition she once told me years ago: when a dying person confesses, their words are heavier than stones. I feel that weight now pressing into my chest. She closes her eyes, briefly gathering strength, then opens them again. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I never stopped loving you. Even in the secrecy, even in the lies, I loved you through every signature. That's all I have left to give you now. Silence swells between us, but this time it is not avoidance. It is the silence of raw truth laid bare, fragile and final. I squeeze her hand gently, conflicted tears blurring my vision. You should have trusted me, I whisper. She nods faintly, her lips quivering. I know, and that will haunt me more than any debt. Her confession is both closure and wound, a truth that soothes and scars in equal measure. I thought hearing her reasons would bring me peace. Instead, it leaves me with a heavier truth that love itself can betray when it chooses silence over trust. And I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The days that follow feel like standing in the aftermath of a storm. The papers are signed, the assets gone, the trust now in the hands of strangers. Nothing I say or do will change that. At first, rage simmers in me, rising with every glance at her frail figure. But slowly, another feeling seeps in: grief, not just for what we lost, but for the love warped by silence. I sit by her bed, watching her breathe. Each rise and fall of her chest feels like a reminder that time itself is thinning. She looks smaller now, not just from illness, but from carrying burdens she thought she had to face alone. I should hate her for it, but hatred withers when you stare long enough at someone you've built a life with. What's left is sorrow, and beneath it a strange, stubborn thread of love that refuses to snap. I think of the promises we once made to face every hardship together, to share every burden. She broke that promise, yes, but so did I in a way. I let silence linger too long, mistaking it for respect when it was really avoidance. I saw the letters piling the shadows under her eyes, and I chose not to push. Perhaps betrayal doesn't always begin with a lie. Sometimes it begins with the questions we're too afraid to ask. An obscure memory comes to me, my grandmother's belief that forgiveness is like fire. It burns, it scars, but it also clears the field for new growth. If you never forgive, the ground stays barren. I'm not sure yet if I can forgive her fully, but maybe someday I will. The administrators and lawyers no longer come. The ward has returned to its ordinary hum of machines and footsteps. Yet I know nothing will ever be ordinary again. We will leave this hospital not as the couple who walked in, but as two people bound by scars. I look at her sleeping now, her hand resting lightly on the blanket. I place mine over it. Not gripping, not holding, just touching, acknowledging that even in betrayal there is still connection. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. Perhaps rebuilding, perhaps more loss. But I know this silence can kill love as surely as sickness and truth, no matter how heavy, must be spoken before it's too late. I rise from the chair, stretching my stiff back, and whisper into the still air. We may have lost everything else, but I won't let us lose each other completely. Not yet. The words don't erase the betrayal, but they steady me. Closure isn't forgetting, it's choosing how to carry what remains. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.